Okay, sir, you're on.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. Let's call the Public Works and Utilities Committee meeting for December 14th to order. Could we have a roll call vote, please, Miss Ray Diaz?
Yes. Councilor Rivera,
I'm here.
Councilor Garcia,
Present.
Councilor Abeta,
Here.
Councilor Lindell,
Here.
and Councilor Vigil Coppler.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Miss Ray Diaz. Approval of the agenda. Any changes from staff, Miss Wheeler?
No changes from, change for the consent agenda, but not the agenda overall, Chairman.
All right, I think, so this is the place that we would pull probably what Shannon Jones had emailed earlier. So I don't know if you want to do that.
Yes, please. Staff would like to postpone item 8, Charlie.
8 Charlie postponed. All right, any other changes, Miss Wheeler?
Mr. Chair, is that 8? That would be 8C, right? Buckman direct diversion?
Yes, 8C is in Charlie.
Okay, thank you.
No other changes, Chairman.
Is there any changes from the committee? All right, so we have approval of the agenda with the amendment to postpone 8C. Is that, I don't know if you know, Ms. Wheeler, till the next meeting or to a time uncertain?
I think it's to the next meeting. I think the purpose of the postponement, Chairman, is to have some conversation with folks in advance to explain it a little better and then bring it forward.
All right, so postpone to the next meeting. All right, thank you. No other discussion? All right, can we have a roll call vote, please, Miss Ray Diaz?
Councilor Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Garcia,
Yes.
Councilor Abeta,
Yes.
Councilor Lindell,
Yes.
and Councilor Vigil Coppler.
Yes.
Vote passes.
Very good. Thank you. Motion passes. Next, approval of the consent agenda. Any changes from staff, Miss Wheeler?
No additional changes, Chairman.
All right, anything the committee members would like to pull?
Mr. Chair.
Councilor Garcia.
Not necessary to pull item I, but I would like to co-sponsor it.
Item I, co-sponsor.
Yes, sir.
Okay, anything committee members would like to pull? Councilor Lindell.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to pull item I.
Item I, okay. Anything else from committee members? Don't see anything. What are the wishes of the committee?
Move to approve as amended.
Second.
Motion for approval is amended by Councilor Lindell, a second by Councilwoman Vigil Coppler. Any further discussion? See none, can we have a roll call vote, please, Ms. Ray Diaz?
Councilor Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Garcia,
Yes.
Councilor Abeta,
Yes.
Councilor Lindell,
Yes.
and Councilor Vigil Coppler.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next, approval of the minutes from November 9th, 2020. Any changes from staff, Ms. Wheeler?
No changes, Chairman.
All right, anything from the committee? Wishes of the committee?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve from Councilwoman Vigil Coppler, second from Councilwoman Lindell. Any further discussion? See none, can we have a roll call vote, please, Ms. Ray Diaz?
Yes. Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Abeyta,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
yes,
Counselor Vihil Coppler.
yes,
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next round, public comment. Do we have anybody that's joined us or any written comments, Ms. Radius?
There was no written comments or no notification that anyone was joining us for public comment.
All right. And Mr. Abeyta, do you see anybody on that might want to comment? Everybody that I see on appears to be staff, so I think we're okay. All right, let's move on to presentation items, matters from Public Works staff, including update on integration of parks into Public Works and the plan for capital project status presentation coming in January, and solar street lighting project status and next steps. Ms. Wheeler.
Thank you, Chairman. I wonder if I might, if it's not out of order, to offer to have the pulled consent item go before this presentation. I think we might be talking for about a half an hour, and I didn't know if I believe city manager is on the line to support that item that was pulled from consent. It's up to you, of course.
I think we needed to do that while we were talking about the agenda itself, so I think we're sort of stuck with the way that we're going, so.
Okay,
go ahead.
thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chairman and members of the committee. I wanted to just have an opportunity to begin regular conversations with the Public Works and Public Utilities Committee on how Public Works is doing and big initiatives that we're working on, and keep you informed and get your input. Councilor Rivera listed the things that I'll be talking about. We had been planning to do a big capital projects presentation to the governing body, but with the agenda being so busy with the chart committee and all of the CARES Act, we'll be giving our regular sort of set quarterly semi-annual report in January. But I did want to let you know that capital projects are well underway and being well attended. We are managing about $75 million of projects right now. People are doing a really good job. I've actually checked on the progress. They are progressing despite sort of all of the reorganization of our daily work with COVID. Some projects have been completed since we started with the GRT bond in early 2019. For instance, the bridges in the parks and on the trails that we're going to be get a new surface have been completed. Max and Friends Dog Park has been completed. Airport taxiway and runway safety area projects have either been completed or are nearly complete. Salvador Perez is complete, and Genevieve Chavez Community Center are complete. And so we're making progress, and other projects are well underway. I was going to give you sort of a quantification. So of the projects that are underway, about 36 million of them, $36 million worth is being managed out of the facilities division with the project administrators in that division. Engineering team, mostly the engineering division for road projects is managing about $20 million of projects. And the airport alone is the third largest category all by itself. That's at 16 million. And those projects are currently being managed by Mark Baca himself. He's back to managing his own projects since that project administrator position was frozen. And of course, he's doing a great job with those, and you'll learn a lot more about it. And we'll all be talking more about the capital projects this Friday with our legislative delegation as we talk about our priorities for the next legislative session, and give them a little update on the progress of projects that they funded, which do include the airport projects, the teen center projects, the downtown bathrooms, and of course the big solarization project. And And so that's just kind of a big overview of what's going on in capital. You body saw and approved sort of a capital budget for fiscal year 21 when they approved the what's also known as Andy's Big Bar that carried over a lot of the funding that already was present for capital projects and carried it over into this fiscal year. So those are going full steam ahead. I wanted to also highlight some information about the solar project. So as you might remember, in 2019 session, the governing body made a solarization project for the city of Santa Fe its #1 priority. The legislature awarded us $925,000 out of the $1 million that we've asked for. The project description, we would leverage a public-private partnership to make this a project so that the legislative funding was seed money. And the governing body approved a contract with an energy services company about 1.5 years ago to undertake an audit of probably about 40 different facilities and pumping stations to see where solar was feasible economically and physically. They completed the audit. They found approximately 2.8 megawatts of solar arrays on 17 facilities feasible, 9,000 LED lighting retrofits, about 6,000 domestic water fixtures upgraded for water savings. And that was all put together in a package. We brought that again to governing body to do a next step of due diligence, which is to submit the interconnection applications to PNM and to do some further work on maybe some land agreements to put arrays on Forest Service land or county land. So that has been ongoing. And we're now at the point that we're ready to actually execute the construction project once we get the funding. So the total project amount, which I think was foreshadowed when we went into the due diligence phase, is about $15.5 million of solar and lighting retrofit. It's on water facilities, it's on BDD, and it's on city facilities, including the Southside Library, the police admin, Fire Station 8, Alto Street Complex, a number of facilities. And we're working right now with the city's bond council and finance to pursue funding. As you know, it's a really good time to borrow money at a really good rate. And we are excited that these are economically feasible, which means that the improvements are paid for by the savings. And then after the financing is paid off, we have positive net cash flow for the final about 10 years of the life of the assets. And that's also a great time for us to be putting a capital infusion into local jobs. Solar has to be installed by people locally. LED lighting retrofits have to be done by people locally. And so the city will be, with approval from the governing body, making that that investment into our economy. And we expect to bring that forward with all the details of the financing and the final contract forms in January.
So Ms. Wheeler, let's see if there are any questions regarding the capital projects or the street lighting projects you just mentioned, and then we'll move on from there. So any questions?
Mr. Chair?
Councilwoman Vihel-Cobbler.
I don't know if this is the right place, but I want to ask, I have had a discussion about the graffiti at the Genevieve Chavez skate park. And apparently the response was that they were looking into maybe materials and such that could be applied where it wouldn't be very easy to have graffiti on that skate park. I don't know if that's a capital project of some sort or what that is, but it seemed like it was a lot more involved than what repainting could do.
Chairman, Councilor Vihel-Cobbler, that sounds a little bit more like an operational issue that we'll address, probably not a big capital project, but since we have, I don't know if Melissa Mcdonald's aware of this issue, we have the acting Parks Director with us. Melissa, were you aware of this issue?
Councilor Kai was not aware of that, but I will follow up with you on that, the specifics of that site. That did not come up on my CRMs, and I'm not sure where that was directed.
Okay, we can talk about that later. Then, Mr. Chair, I have one more question. And I'm not sure if this is the appropriate place, but it has to do with streetlights. I had talked with John Romero about this some time ago. I think it was prior to the last legislative session that was live. There had been a request to install a street light in between the state capitol, I'm Don Gasper, in between the state capitol and the annexed property that leads toward the old state library, which is no longer. And apparently a lot of employees exit in between those two buildings onto Don Gasper toward the parking garage. But it's in all that foliage in between the two buildings that the employees are really scared when they leave late at night to walk through. And they don't always get a police escort because sometimes they're not available, but they often do walk the employees through there. So we had a request to install a street light to light up that area. And I know that John Romero was going to do a drive-by so he could look at night to see how dark it is. I don't know if that's anywhere on the list or whatever happened to that.
Thank you, Chairman, Councilor Poplar. It might be helpful if everybody who's not speaking could mute, because we're getting a big echo when people speak. And I am not aware of that request for that street light, and I'd be happy to get in touch with you and get the details so that we could take a look at that, about getting some kind of lighting installed there.
Yeah, I think it's from what I understand and know about it myself, it's probably worthy of one. And it would be, I think, a very good gesture. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other questions regarding capital outlay or lighting projects? Ms. Wheeler, in the paper recently, there's an article about the legislature looking at pulling back funding projects that hadn't been started or complete yet. Are we in danger of losing any funding from the legislature?
Thank you, Chairman, for that question. We've been through this twice already, I believe now, since that the legislature went back to scrape money, and we have not lost a single dollar yet so far. At the time, John Romero was acting public works director when we went through it the 2 times before, and the staff has been really diligent about encumbering as much as possible. And I think we show encumbrances, we show expenditures on every single appropriation that we have of significance. And I think, our track record of reporting good progress protects as much as we possibly can be. Certainly nothing's 100%, but so far so good. And we're aware of that risk and definitely trying to demonstrate really good forward progress with the monies that have been provided.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? All right, why don't we move on to the integration? Go ahead, Ms. Wheeler.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry. And so one more thing I wanted to say about capital projects. And so as you might remember, we have been giving these really detailed reports where each project had the big gigantic spreadsheet and had the big graph about time versus money and progress. And the big feedback that I've been getting is that, certainly it's not accessible to the public. And so I'm working with Jennifer Fabian to put all of our capital projects into Esri, our ArcGIS online tool. So people will be able to go into will be able to access the information much more readily, as well as the counselors. It'll be a simpler way of reporting, much more transparency with the public. And we are even planning at this point to put our sort of the big capital wish list into Esri eventually, so that people can see what's on the list, what's not, what are the priorities and how do they get chosen. So that's we're working on that right now, and I'm hoping to have some really good progress on that by January, when we give you more details on the capital project progress. And then the next topic that I wanted to talk about was sort of staffing overall in Public Works. And we mentioned the reorg specifically, but as I started writing notes to talk about the reorg, I thought, oh my goodness, well, there's a bigger context to think about any staffing initiatives inside of right now, and that is COVID budget. So, you know, a 30% reduction in budget across the board is obviously a significant management challenge. It's a significant challenge for our workers, having their work completely reformatted in the last 9 months and happening instantly at the end of March. I'd just like to really acknowledge and thank all of the Public Works workers. We have over 200 employees that have not skipped a beat since the beginning of COVID. They've been taking care of our streets. They've been keeping the airport running. We have our custodians who have been doing, you know, accelerating their expertise on disinfection and their attendance to all of our facilities. And just all the Public Works employees have done such a great job of continuing to deliver services and really keeping each other well in the workplace. Our parks team, which we'll talk more to in a few minutes. And so just really wanted to let you know that Public Works is doing well. I think morale is as well as could be expected in this difficult, challenging time for everybody with individual challenges. But as a team, the team is working well to get the services provided for the public. And so despite that, we do have, you know, the budget reductions, the extensive vacancies that we're working with are very challenging for a number of people. That we have a lot of people working 2 jobs. They're in acting positions, so they're doing their old job and they're doing an additional job to fill a gap. So some people are really stretched, and you know, we're taking a serious look at that and making recommendations and requests to HR and to senior leadership about where we need to fill some gaps so that we don't burn anybody out and lose any of our spectacular people. The project administrators all this time have been continuing to work on the capital projects. So the context is challenging. I think the results are impressive. And just wanted to thank the city employees for that, the Public Works employees, and of course utilities too. And so that's the context. And inside of that, we brought parks into Public Works with the reorg, as you know, and we were really excited to do that, to find efficiencies and support that team and really help them do their job better. And I think the first big piece was that Melissa Mcdonald agreed to be acting over parks and MRC and her regular job, which is the stormwater manager. So she's managing what was previously 2 divisions as well as her section stormwater. And she's here today to tell us a little bit about the integration of parks into Public Works.
Thank you, Ms. McDonald.
Thank you, Chairman Rivera and councilors. I do want to also take a moment to thank Regina Wheeler, John Munoz, Jen Romero, Thomas Martinez for their help in this transition. Without these teams, I think it would have been much rockier. So I've been getting a lot of support from lots of people, but those individuals in particular have lent their teams and expertise, and I think that's been helpful to this transition. So as Regina mentioned, in September, I was asked to become the city's acting Parks Division Director, which oversees the MRC, which is a golf course in Saukar Valley. And I'm also maintaining the river and watershed section. So overnight, I went from managing 3 people to 63 people, which is quite a bit. But although this is a huge transition, it's taken a great deal of work. I think things are going really well, and I'm feeling enthusiastic about this shift. I think that a lot of the skill sets that Public Works brings is going to be helpful to parks, and I'll try to touch on some of those items here in a moment. So we started off very first thing reviewing our organizational structure. When we broke apart, different people went to recreation and some people stayed in streets. And John Munoz was very helpful in lending his folks to fill in. And then Tomas Martinez has also been really helpful plugging in a few people that have kind of helped that. But we've identified several gaps that are important for you to know. Administratively, we are in need of making sure that we get somebody in parks. As I said, there's 63 employees plus seasonals, which will be coming on in the spring. Out at the MRC in particular. And I am kind of advocating that we look at that for the parks section because it is an industry standard and it's a way for us to be more efficient with our funds. But one of the things that we identified is that we have 2 lead superintendent positions that we're recommending become 1 operations manager for parks. So this would be a higher level skilled superintendent position that could really oversee the other superintendents and kind of manage the day-to-day equipment purchases, things like that. It would be much more hands-on. We also are asking for an administrative manager position, and we've been working with HR and finance to do this in a budget neutral way. So that's coming along, but I'd like to see this happen this winter. So hopefully that will happen. The reason I want it to happen in the winter is that the CRMs and the workload associated with the spring and the summer is going to increase dramatically. And that isn't going to change because of COVID. Those weeds are going to come up in the medians and the parks, whether or not we have people in them. So I really do want to get ahead on these things. We also are really trying to realign our efforts with Public Works, and this is going to be ongoing, but some of the things that I've reported on in the past or in the recent past to you is the capital equipment reallocation, which I think was a huge success. I worked with park staff to kind of realign some of the previous requests. We were thankful that we were able, you all passed this so that we could get some more equipment. We're anticipating great success with this, and we're busily getting those purchases in. So we're doing things like purchasing wider mowers so we can reduce staff time, get more ground covered, that type of thing. We have new equipment coming in for median and trail work, and we'll keep you posted on that. Also, the workflows between streets, stormwater, the sign shop, parks are becoming more efficient in the reorg. Just the complementary nature of these teams has allowed for a better understanding of problems as they come up, CRMs, project work, and we're really starting to streamline how the funding is flowing and how that works in addressing problems. And that's kind of ongoing. Again, one of our major goals for this fiscal year as we wrap up is really to get ahead of the weeds. I know you hear these complaints about the weeds and the medians and the right-of-ways and the arroyos. And, you know, we're really trying to streamline how do we make that work. And it's going to be a challenge for sure. But I think the stormwater's work is getting more streamlined in this effort. And our expertise is kind of doing a crossover that I think is going to be really helpful for parks in ways that we haven't seen before. So that's helpful for us. Along the same lines, we're working on the homeless encampments. I know that that's been a challenge. I've heard from some of you about this. We're working on the homeless team with constituent services, community services, stormwater, fire, and police. And, you know, what we're finding is that while it may take a little longer with some of the encampments, that when we do cleanups, we're having some longer success with them. So I will keep you posted on that. We're also brought in a few assistant help, you know, contractors through the CARES Fund to help us with that. And that's been a good thing. We've also better utilized impact fees. We received $1.3 million, something like that, impact fees. These have been kind of not collected recently from parks. And I think this is going to be really helpful to our budgets moving forward because it's money that we might have spent portions on out of our operating budgets. And we're actually aligning new equipment that's servicing new residents in a stronger way. And I think this is really helpful. And Carlos Jamora has been really great help on that. But again, that frees up some dollars for maintenance. We also have been much more active in the land use design review team. And I was involved in that through the stormwater, and now I'm acting on behalf of parks. And I think this is critical to our transition, because it's really taking a project management mindset and applying it to our functions in parks. And so, when we get new parks, we also get new responsibilities, and that often doesn't come with funding. And so by being at the table as it comes through, we're able to tailor what we're asking for and how the developers are implementing these parks. And this is, I think, a huge area. If we can get our head wrapped around and really get control of, we could have a lot better outcomes in terms of maintenance. So that's going very well, actually. So it's very fortunate that things have been scaled back in some ways. I know that we had in terms of events, I know we had a very wonderful event with the plaza lighting. Thank you, Councilor Rivera, for your praise the other day on the council. I did get that message and I shared it with our crews, and they're doing great. Mark Aragon is leading that effort, and they really appreciate that. Thank you. But again, it's good that it's been a little bit scaled back, because this has allowed us to have a little more time to work on our transition. I am working closely with Barbara Lopez and John Munoz and Christine to kind of plan for post-COVID activities, and no one really knows what that's going to look like. So before wrapping up, I just want to thank and recognize the hard work of Gary Varela. I know he's on the call, and I would like you all to check in with him. He really has been instrumental in this transition. Without him, I think it would have been really very much harder, maybe impossible. Gary has just been so great about getting people out the door and then meeting with me at 7 a.m. in the morning and kind of going over what we need to do for the day. Gary will be retiring in February, and that's going to leave a huge gap for us. And this comes on the heels of course, Chris Ortiz's retirement, Richard Thompson's retirement, Jen Romero's retirement, and John Romero's retirement. So the bright side of all this is that our less seasoned employees are being more challenged, and they're really stepping up to those challenges, and they're doing great. But the most important message that I have for the council today or tonight would be that we really do need to work hard to train and replace these hardworking individuals. Gary has been a total saint, and I just really, really appreciate his efforts, but we're gonna really need to make sure that we get people trained up and new people in to make this work. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Gary, if he's still on the line, to give his impressions of the transition.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes,
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Councilor, Chair Rivera, and council members, I just like to kind of reiterate some of the stuff that Melissa mentioned. We're a lot of our reasons that there was some shortfallings with the parks in the past is our lack of equipment that we had and kind of old and equipment that hadn't been replaced. I think now with this capital allocation, that's all going to change. She mentioned the stuff about the new mowing equipment, stuff for trails. That's going to help in the sense that, for example, Franklin Miles, it'll take us an hour to mow that with two wide mowers rather than all day with the smaller stuff. So those things, I've talked a lot with staff and kind of met with them and powwowed like a little bit, I guess, for lack of a better word. And we've most of the folks that here at Parks are really excited about where we're headed. I think that again, Melissa's done an excellent job of coming in and taking over in the middle of the game. I think she's a great leader. She's done some good stuff, and that has filtered down to the staff here. We've morale has improved totally. The guys are excited, especially the trails. The trails is a big thing now with the COVID. We've got people using trails, and so we purchased some sophisticated equipment that multi-use equipment that is going to be able to help us to sweep, clean parks, mow. Sweep and clean trails, mow the sides. We're going to do all that with one piece of equipment and one guy. That's going to be pretty cool. And then again, we've purchased some new vehicles. Some new I'm gonna say this, and I hope I don't get anybody mad, but the last time that we purchased a dump truck with the city of, with the parks was when I started 26 years ago. And now we're getting some new stuff. We're getting some new, we're getting some new equipment, some more sophisticated equipment, so again, the team here is very excited. They're and like I said, we had some issues of morale and stuff in the past. That's all changing. Everybody's looking, again towards moving forward with everything that we're doing, and I think that we've got some good leadership guys waiting in the wings, like Melissa mentioned, that we need to go get them trained, and we'll work on that between now and February to get all of that. And I think we're heading in the right direction. I'm excited about this. Too bad my career is coming to an end here shortly. I would have loved to have been a big part of it, but again, we'll leave it in excellent shape. And again, I just like to thank everybody for all the efforts. And I think moving forward, this is going to be a very, especially with the public works and the support we're getting, is going to be a huge success. And again, I've been here a long time, and I see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's getting much better. Melissa briefly mentioned CRMs. We've gotten to a point where we've streamlined how we handle CRMs. We're knocking them out daily. They're coming out daily. Our list that we got last week was, I believe there was 5 new CRMs. And when we first started, there was 150 or pretty close. So we're all of that stuff is moving forward in a much quicker and more efficient way than it had in the past. So again, I'm very excited for this division, and I want to thank Regina and Melissa for stepping in and kind of making this thing go the right way. And I think it's gonna be awesome. You're gonna see a different product in the parks, a much better product that we're gonna put out to the public. We're gonna have more time and like I say, more resources, more equipment. One of the things that I do agree totally with Melissa, that without seasonal employees, it's going to be a struggle. And it's without our temp employees and our seasonals, they're the backbone. They're the laborers. They're the ones that do all the hard stuff that that needs to be done. The stuff that nobody else wants to do. So it's of utmost importance that we get seasonals on board. And I'd like to see that sooner than later. And that's pretty much it. But again, in a nutshell, we're headed in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Varela. Anything else, Ms. McDonald?
No, Chairman. Thank you. Thank you. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them now. Thank you.
I do see Councilor Garcia with his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not necessarily a question for Ms. McDonald or Jean, but definitely want to thank them for their service as we've begun this reorganization process. And I'm glad to hear that the transition is going well. My question relates to the COVID response from Public Works. We didn't have an opportunity to speak to that, and I know that within the reports that have been issued to us, that particular department has had the highest number of cases within their department. And I just want to check in to make sure that we are doing everything we can to ensure safety of the employees, because I have heard reports of, and not necessarily through Public Works, but I've heard reports of, in some instances, managers not wearing masks at work, which then sets the tone of employees not necessarily needing to wear them, and in some instances, employees feeling like if their safety is at risk. And so with that, I just want to, my question is, what measures have you put in place to ensure that everybody that is on site is wearing a mask?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councilor Garcia, for the question. Is that actually a statistical fact that Public Works has more COVID cases than other? Because I think actually that doesn't resonate is exactly correct for me. I know we have a number of them since we do have 400 employees, so we're a significant portion of the city's employees. And I actually have been watching every single case as it happens, and I'm aware of every single case. And we do take a look at, what are the work environments? Have we responded properly? What might have been the cause? And to my knowledge, there's one case that may be traced to the workplace and all the rest are from home. And I think that's a pretty consistent theme on most of the employees, except for maybe other people that actually have to stay very close together. So some of the things that we put in place is that we have split crews in half so that you have fewer people where you have essential employees that have to come in. It's half as big of a crew. We have employees going straight to their equipment rather than coming into the office area. We've closed off communal eating areas and break rooms. Everybody is required to wear a mask, and I drive around a lot. I've been, as you know, I've been out and about since the beginning. If I ever see anybody with a mask, without a mask, I stop and immediately address it. But it's never been our employees. It's always been contractors that I've had to remind to wear a mask. Of course, most of our employees, anybody that can, is working from home, and that's a significant number of people. Probably over 150 people are working from home. So for instance, I'm in Market Station and I come into the office about twice a week and there's never anybody here. The parking office is open from on Tuesdays and Thursdays from, I think, 10 to 2. And so there's a couple of employees that come in then, and if I see anybody in this building not wearing a mask, I address it. So and we talk about it at every single one of my staff meetings with division directors. We talk about, are you aware of all the regulations? HR, I think, has done a really good job of giving us clearer and clearer and clearer guidance and notification that's faster and following up and really, good support. So, we have hand disinfection stations everywhere. We're not sharing equipment. As you know, early on, the transit vehicles rigged up some buses so that barriers in between the drivers and passengers that might be COVID. So we've taken a number of measures, although I did suggest that we might want to actually do another audit and have facilities crews, some facility staff walk around to all the different city offices and offer directors any kind of additional guidance for making these places even safer. So I don't think we're insulated from some statistical occurrence of COVID at the city of Santa Fe at our large employee base, right? We will have some, and they won't all get it from work, but what we're really working to do is prevent any transmission at work.
Great, thank you for that thorough feedback. I really appreciate it. I just want to make sure that we are protecting the employees from any potential exposure that might occur at the workplace, and it sounds like that is happening. So I thank you for your due diligence on the matter. And if there's anything at least I can do to help support that, I think please don't hesitate to reach out. I just want employees to feel that when they do have to step into the workplace, that they are safe. They're not going to go home at the end of the day, but have contracting COVID. I think, as we all know, with the first vaccinations being administered today, it seems like we're kind of on the final stretch of this, hopefully, and COVID fatigue has set in for folks, and I can definitely believe that and feel that, but we want to ensure that throughout the entire process we're keeping everybody safe. So thank you for that thorough information, Ms. Wheeler, and then once again just want to give Melissa and Gina a shout out and thank them for their service. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilwoman Vio Coppler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to first say that I'm really happy to get this report. It's refreshing, and we all know where we've been, and what I see happening in with Melissa's leadership is that she's thinking ahead and having some vision, for what's going to happen next spring, even anticipation of weeds. And so I think planning for all of this, because as she said, and we all know, it's going to happen. And so gathering up the troops and rallying and getting everything at least talked about putting people on notice so that hopefully you get the support and budgetary measures that you need to be successful. Because it was really last year at, weed time it was horrible. Every meeting, I mean, somebody had something to say about it, as you probably know. But, I like hearing, what I hear was, what I heard from you and Mr. Varela, and thanks to Mr. Varela as well, is, you're thinking of cross-training and succession planning. That's how I think you run things to develop some measure of continuity, because, once you do this and you plan for it, it becomes like second nature, and you don't have to worry what you're going to do when the weeds come out, or like Regina probably, you don't have to worry, what are you going to do when the snow falls? Oh, let's order some sand. That's the wrong time to do it. So it's good to look to the future, and I'm very happy, Melissa, that you're already thinking about adequate staffing, because it's obvious that we can't do it without that. So I just like everything I've heard tonight from both of you, and I'm really looking forward to your future as far as what the city will look like, and in your area of expertise. And I want to thank you once again. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other questions or comments? All right, I'll take a minute to just thank Ms. Mcdonald for taking on the extra duties. It sounds like she's doing a really good job, and Ms. Mcdonald, you are truly appreciated. So I'm glad this part of the reorg seems to be working really well. And I give credit to Ms. Wheeler, Ms. Mcdonald, Mr. Varela, all those people mentioned before. Just like Mr. Ortiz, I respect Mr. Varela tremendously, and the fact that he's trying to create a career ladder for those that are underneath him to be able to step up into those supervisory roles and continue the work that Parks is doing, I think is a testimony to his leadership. So Mr. Varela, you'll be missed. I don't know if we'll hear from you or see you again before you actually retire, but you've done a great job. You and Chris Ortiz will surely be missed, but hearing what you said about bringing those and hearing about those that are ready to kind of move up into those roles is promising. So thank you for that. And your career in the city is much appreciated. So thank you, Mr. Varela. I think that was about it. Any other final? Oh, I did want to say one more thing. So I think when we did the reorg, there was some concern that maybe Parks would get into the situation where they would be hearing from either Recreation or from Public Works that things they were working on didn't need assistance from either or. So as we start getting into normal life, hopefully this summer, keep that in mind. And Ms. McDonald, let us know how that's working out, how the working relationship between Parks and Rec and Parks and Public Works is actually working. But so far it sounds like everything's moving smoothly. But again, as we move into regular life, let's see if that continues. So thank you again for all your work. Any other questions? All right, let's move on to was there anything else, Ms. Wheeler, before we move on?
No, thank you so much, Chairman.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to our action items, and we're on to item I, which was consideration of a resolution directing the city manager to provide written updates and presentations at every regular governing body meeting with information regarding the COVID-19 response from the police department, fire department, human resources, and emergency management and safety. Councilwoman Lindell, you pull this.
Thank you, Chair. I'll make my comments very brief. I am a co-sponsor on this. However, I do have some concerns on page 3, lines 18 and 19. I will ask City Manager LaPen Hill to send out to all counselors the different categories, the levels for enforcement. I'm concerned after really reviewing the levels, which go from 1 to 6 or 7, that I'm concerned about moving this up a level. The items, some of the items that are at 3 and at 2, it makes me think that probably leaving this at 3 is reasonable. I see that City Manager LaPen Hill is on the meeting. Would you be willing to send the call type priority list to all counselors so they would have an opportunity to review that?
Mr. Chair, Councilor Lindell, absolutely. I'll pull it up right now and hit send.
I don't need to belabor this, Chair. I'm just saying that in really taking a review of this list, I'm concerned about moving that level of priority. So I know that we'll have other opportunities to discuss this. I'm just bringing it up as a point that I would like other counselors to take a good hard review of that list. So that's all I have, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lindell. Mr. Guillen, you had your hand up. Did you want to comment to this? Mr. Guillen.
Sorry. I just wanted to thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to let the council committee know that there's a slightly updated version in the packet along with the FIR. So if you refresh your page, those will show up and you can review that as well.
All right. Does anything have to deal with what we're talking about now?
The only change on well, there's just a brief, the main change is just a brief description on what level 2 means in reference to that paragraph that Councilor Lindell was just referring to.
All right, thank you. Councilwoman Vihel-Coppler, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate us we did just now get the priority list. So with regard to Councilor Lindell's comments, and prior to that, I was also wondering, you know, about the comparison, like, would I be a police officer, a police chief, or someone, maybe even just a person in need of a police officer? Like it says here, priority 2, hit and run, other stuff that deals with maybe putting people in direct assault or sexual assault. You know, we only have so many officers on the street at one time. And I remember being shocked at this when I did 2 different ride-alongs at different times of different shifts, graveyard and swing shift. And it really resonated with me that we don't have enough officers to go around. And so if we raise this to level 2, then, you know, somebody else might not get their help that puts their real life in danger. But I do need time to digest this. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but you know, life in danger to me means a lot. I mean, real life in danger, and COVID is real life in danger, but it's yet to be determined. So before we got this list, I was thinking, well, gee, this sure is micromanaging the police department, but I'm not sure. But I appreciate the level of consideration that was taken into writing this. But I guess my still down deep, my study and would be, you know, do we really need to determine that the level of this, but I see now that it is already broken down, and I guess I would have to ask the chief, and I do see that Chief Padilla is on. I mean, is there some latitude and independent judgment that a police officer makes when they get a call coming in? And do they go to this chart and say, oh, no, I'm not going to do that one. That's level 3. I'll just wait for something good. How does it work in real life?
Mr. Chair, Counselor, that's a great question. And again, the officers don't get to cherry pick which calls they go to. Some do, obviously, when all the high priority calls 1s and 2s are done. And now it's incidents that are way after the fact. Then if the calls for service are there of a lost wallet concern or stolen bike, then at that point, whatever area or police beat that they're assigned to, they may have that opportunity to jump on that and cherry pick the call. But yes, it's based upon those priorities. So the dispatcher sitting at that dispatcher council sees, okay, Officer Andrew Padilla is available in this area and another officer is available and it's a priority 1 call and 2 people need to go to it. He or she is going to dispatch that officer or group of officers to that call. So that's what they're going to base it upon. And just as a reminder, and I acknowledge what Councillor Lindell is saying and Councillor Avila Koppler, what you're saying about the priority level and the priorities, the way it falls. If this resolution does pass, it's something that can't just affect the police department. If we were to suggest changing the priority level from a 3 to a 2, that's something that would have to go in front of the Regional Emergency Communications Board because it would affect the Sheriff's Department, also the Edgewood Police Department, who also follow the same priority levels.
So can I ask a question about that? You mean this chart we have in front of us, the levels of calls, this is something that's in a region?
Mr. Chair, Counselor, that is correct. The dispatch center, the RECC, the Regional Emergency Communications Center, oversees and dispatches for the Sheriff's Department, the City Police Department, and then the Edgewood Police Department. So the Edgewood Police Department, Sheriff's Department, Police Department all follow this priority list. So if this resolution were to suggest to change it from a 3 to a 2, we can all have that comfy feeling, but this is something that would have to go in front of the RECC board and have their backing and decision power to upgrade it or change it because they also follow this priority list. So we can't just up and right change it right now because it has something that has to go in front of the RECC board.
So when a call actually does come in, it's really the dispatch person that decides by using this chart where he or she's going to send the help.
It's totally up to that dispatcher sitting at the council that's going to dispatch off of the priorities 1s and 2s.
Okay. All right. Well, those are my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Garcia, you had your hand up and I don't see it there anymore. Did you get your question answered?
Yeah, I had the question on the priority list breakdown, but I got that. And then I did have a question that kind of arose, Mr. Chair, if I may ask.
Go ahead, Councillor.
And the question's for Chief Padilla. What is the frequency of calls we get on COVID instances right now?
Mr. Chair, Councillor Garcia, so since COVID has struck and then up until recently, and the rough numbers that we threw here into the resolution was 202 calls for service. And then we've issued up to date, the most recent numbers today is 14 citations under the city ordinance. For the month of November, there was a total of 79 calls for service for COVID related information. So there was 58 on COVID info calls. Those covered capacity limits or large gatherings. And then there was 21 calls for service that for someone reporting a mask violation. So we did a snapshot there. During the whole month of November, there was 5,732 calls for service for law enforcement. And of the 5,732, 79 were related to COVID. So 1.4% were COVID related.
Okay, thank you so much, Chief Padilla. I really appreciate the the information. I just didn't know if you were not getting any responses or calls in. That was frequent, not frequent. Okay, thank you for clarifying that for me. That's all I had, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other questions? All right, Ms. LePenhill, you and I had a discussion about this, and really this was my addition to this resolution, and I'll explain why. Really, COVID's not on there right now, so you don't see a COVID priority right now in any of the lists. So I think it was more in response to really what the police chief had said in a prior meeting, that really COVID was not a priority. And I think with the number of deaths that we've had in the state, in the city around COVID, I thought it should be more of a priority than it is. And, you know, looking at the list, and I've seen this list before, but you see priority 3, you see a little ways down, you see active terrorism. That's a level 3. So if you have an active terrorism and it's a priority 3, and then you had an aircraft alert or you had a stalking or a shoplifter call, I think the police officers themselves have some discrepancy to really figure out what's really important and what's not. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the police chief can correct me and say that a shoplifter would take priority over an act of terrorism. Is that correct, Chief?
Yeah, definitely, Mr. Chair. An act of terrorism would take over a shoplifter, but I think, is it information that maybe someone's thinking of doing something, or is it actually in progress? And where the shoplifters come into play is because they've actually been detained by the department store or the place of business, so they actually have someone physically detained. So I believe that's why that one's bumped up on the list.
All right, so there is some room for officer discretion or even RECC discretion?
Yeah, definitely, Mr. Chair. There is some room for discretion and dispatch discretion, and that falls in line with the dispatchers.
Thank you. Ms. LePenhill, you had a conversation with the RECC director about how we respond to really any of these calls on the list. Can you share what she shared with you?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you. I did speak with Vanessa Marquez, who is the director of the RECC, the Regional Emergency Coordination Center that we are part of, that dispatches all these calls. And she, in asking and sort of reviewing the resolution and understanding where we are, they are seeing a huge increase in call volume. There's more robberies, there's more thefts, there's a little more of everything. She did not recommend changing the priority because right now, as we all know, we don't have enough, call times can be longer than anyone wants. And if we switch priorities, it's going to put those then in competition with the priority 2 and perhaps create a more complicated response. That was her thoughts on the matter. Of course, they respond at the request of the relevant agencies. So if this is a decision that the governing body makes, we will put that request to the RECC and it will move through their process. So that was a little bit of what she shared, that they're just seeing increased call volume across the board, across all of their jurisdictions.
Sure, appreciate that. And what's the priority for changing something on the priority list?
Mr. Chair, Councilor Rivera, or Mr. Chair, members of the committee, we would submit in writing through the police chief a request to make that determination, and it would move through from there.
Okay.
So if this resolution were to pass as is, I as city manager would make the recommendation to the police chief. He would in writing submit it to the RECC.
Yeah, thank you. And I, again, don't, if it ends up a level 3, but right now it's not on the list at all. So I was putting a placeholder as a priority 2. If the council decides it should be a priority 3, that's fine. I just wanted it listed somewhere on the list so that it's addressed. And again, I wasn't confident that it was being addressed in an appropriate fashion, and wanted to add it. So I'm open to any suggestions this committee or the council has as this moves forward. So just wanted to put that out there. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, Chief Padilla here.
Chief?
Yeah, just want to clarify on this party list that was shared with you all, it is listed in green as a COVID info. Has anyone, are you guys seen it on the list? It is listed in the list. So once COVID did happen, I have it right below on my list under counterfeiting. I have it as COVID mask. So we already have it as a level 3 or party 3, excuse me, with the dispatch center. So it is on the list that was shared with you all. And I have it as a, looks like it's page number 3 on my end in green under counterfeiting.
I just saw it. Thank you, Chief. Are there any other COVID responses that we get besides masks?
So Mr. Chair, the way the dispatch center has it broken down into, so we can pull it through the system itself through one solution, is COVID info call. That has the information regarding capacity limits at a store or report of a large gathering. And then the second section is the COVID mask call, or a report that someone is not wearing a face covering.
So where would the other one fit in?
I was told they're both under that category there, but then when you do the breakdown or the search for the information through the one solution, that's where it's giving the 2 breakdowns.
And again, my intention is if you have a large gathering of people not wearing masks, that with the amount of spread that we have going and the amount of death that we have in Santa Fe County, especially the 87507 area code, that this might be more of a priority than even some of the priority 2s right now. So a wanted person, a weapon recovered. Again, that's just my opinion, but I'm open to what this council would like to do or this committee would like to do. So that's it. Councilwoman Vihel-Coppler, you have your hand up.
Thank you. I was going to ask the chief. So it's down here as COVID mask, and you've talked a bit about some of the potential calls. If some of the things I hear about are people getting disruptive and really upset with one another when they start telling each other off because the other one doesn't have a mask and all, and then it starts like maybe escalating, and so somebody calls the cops. Would that still stay as priority 3? Would it move up and be called disorderly conduct? Would that be like some time where you would elevate it, or is that just a total judgment call?
Mr. Chair, Councilor Vihel-Coppler, yes, definitely. Someone's definitely arguing one person against another, put on your mask, and another one saying, screw you, I'm not going to wear it. And that person that was told, screw you, calls the police. And at that point, yes, it would get bumped up to a disorderly conduct. Or someone who else is in line, or maybe a store employee is witnessing the argument back and forth. And at that point, yes, I believe someone would call you the non-emergency line or 911 and report it, and it would get categorized as a disorderly conduct. And then those officers would get dispatched on a higher priority because there's that potential for them to physically fight.
Okay, and then does this priority list also apply the same to the fire department? Chief Babcock, I see you're on here.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. So this priority list does not, the fire department does not follow it. We follow a program called ProQA, and it depends on the questions the dispatcher is asking of the caller. If there's respiratory problems or chest pain or cardiac related problems, we prioritize our calls Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and Echo, with Echo being the most serious type of call. So it just depends on the questions being asked of the dispatcher and the answers the caller gives the dispatcher on our priority of calls.
Okay. So then I'd like to go back to the chief. Is there any instance with COVID where, you know, the police would actually be called other than, you know, maybe just a health thing and not a mask thing? Is there any instance where you would be called because of that?
Mr. Chair, Councilor Vale Coppler, that's a stretch, I think. Maybe if someone were to call and say, hey, look, I regularly shop over at Albertsons on Zaffarano. And every time I'm there, maybe sometimes when someone's loading their groceries, or occasionally when I see someone standing in line to go inside, someone's taking their mask on and off or not wearing it at all because they're smoking or eating or something. And they would request and say, hey, that every morning at 8 a.m. they see it happening. It's always the same people. Then at that point, maybe through a close patrol, and they could request to have an officer cruise by and monitor the area. Then at that point, our officers could obviously try to be proactive and be there ahead of time. And like I said, usually just like anything else, when people see a marked police car or an officer in uniform, if they're driving without a seatbelt, talking on a cell phone, what do they immediately do? They put on their seatbelt, or they put the cell phone down and try to play it off. And majority of the time, through that volunteering compliance, when they see the police officer, they wear that face covering. And same thing when our officers have encountered people without a face covering, and either they say they forgot it at home. Our officers are carrying extra face coverings and they're handing them out to the community. So not only is the officer charged with that discretion to figure out, do I cite under the city ordinance, the public health order, they're educating people and having that opportunity to give them that face covering. We don't put it out there and say that you shall issue out X amount of citations every month, because that's when you get into that quota game. Like I said, everyone has to do their part and wear their face coverings like grown adults, and encourage their children to wear them. But it's a tough situation and we can't be everywhere and anywhere. But even like I said, when our officers are encountering people, they're handing out the face coverings that they do have.
Thank you. Now, one last question, Mr. Chair. I have heard anecdotal comments about people seeing other people on the plaza not wearing masks, and a gathering of officers, usually it's in threes, I don't know why, but, or even just one, who knows, but then the officer not doing anything about it. Is that because it's a level 3? or can they escalate it to like right here, right now, level 1? How does that work?
Mr. Chair, Councilor, I guess that question was for me, since we're saying the plaza and the officers grouping on 3.
Yes,
we haven't had officers or the grouping of the officers assigned to the plaza for a couple months now, because those pedal bike officers or plaza officers are assigned over to Pete's Place or Harrison Road for that enforcement for 7 days a week to get that area under control. For some people to keep saying that the officers are congregating there, that is totally incorrect. But yes, if the officers are there and they're witnessing some people without face coverings, whether they're here from New Mexico or not, they should take the initiative and walk up and approach that person and educate them and ask them where's their face covering. If they say they don't have one, well, then give it to them. One issue that I see with our city ordinance is many people are using the excuse is I have a medical condition. Once that person tells the officer I have a medical condition, that all the officer can say is, okay, thank you for telling me that, and they walk away.
Yeah.
Under the public health order, then at that point, what does it say? No ifs, ands, or buts, you shall wear that face covering. Same thing with exercise under the city ordinance. If you're exercising outside, you don't have to wear a face covering. So it kind of contradicts. But going back to your point about the plaza, is once we're done with our Operation Tranquility on Harrison Road now in January, those pedal bike officers will be returning back to the plaza area, the downtown area, to focus on face coverings and everything else that comes with the plaza, as we're hopefully in the upward trend of opening things up in a perfect world into 2021. But yes, encouraging them as well to be proactive and to educate people again and say, hey, look, we need to help control the spread and you need to wear a face covering. And some people, like I said, get unruly. Then at that point, that officer has that discretion to cite them under the city ordinance or that public health order. But just as a reminder that our officers are encountering people and they are telling the officer, hey, officer, thank you for telling me this, but I have a medical condition. And it's not up to the officer to say, prove it to me, show me a doctor's note, or let me speak to your healthcare provider. and battle it out right there on the street. Once they say medical condition, we say, okay, thank you, sir or ma'am, and they're on their way.
That's just like jury duty, getting out of a jury summons. No proof necessary. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anything else from the committee before we go to Councilwoman Cassett Sanchez? All right, Councilwoman Cassett Sanchez, thank you for joining us. Do you have a question or a comment?
I do. I have both. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Lindell, for bringing up this topic. And as Councilor Rivera said, one of the reasons that I was pleased when Councilor Rivera brought forward this suggestion is there was some concern over comments that had been made about COVID response not being a priority because of where it was located on this list, and how individuals may call to report an instance that they could be concerned about, whether it's gathering, and then by the time one of our officers does arrive at the scene, it's already too late. And as Councilor Rivera pointed out, that COVID really is a life and death situation. It's why it has disrupted so much of our daily lives and our economy and our community, and really making sure that we are taking the action steps. But I'm happy to review this. I am curious to hear what the rest of my colleagues think over the next couple of days. So I'm pleased to look at that. I did have one question for Chief Padilla regarding the enforcement. So we do have our city mask ordinance. The state, however, does have a mask regulation that is stricter than ours. So my understanding, and we did go ahead and put it in the resolution to have the police enforce whichever order is stronger at the time, but I'm curious why we are going with the city as opposed to the state right now, because when I was discussing this, I was told that that would already be occurring because the state overrules us.
Mr. Chair, Councilor Cassett Sanchez, the city ordinance is what we've been following. As the citations that are issued, they are going through municipal court. It's easier for us as that working relationship with municipal court to move things forward. My suggestion would be to pull that city ordinance altogether, and we just rely on that state ordinance or the public health order 100%. That would be my recommendation, unless we were to amend and update the city ordinance, just saying, of course, that we will follow it 100% and get rid or strike the exercising without a face covering or the excuse I have a medical condition and I can't wear it.
Thank you, Chief. I do believe that a medical condition still is included in an exemption with the state orders. Am I correct? Nobody knows. We'll take a look. All right. Well, thank you. I do appreciate that. The purpose was to make sure that we are going with the stricter regulations, but that we still do have the capabilities that as we move out of this to be ensuring that we are still taking care of our community as an individual and unique community that may still require some mask ordinances, even if other parts of the state are able to move away from them at a point in the future. I think those were all my comments. Thank you, everybody, for the discussion. Thank you, Councilor Lindell. As I mentioned, I'm happy to take a look at this, but I think striking a balance, and as Councilor Rivera said, to make sure that this is something that is taken seriously, that is responded to, and that we make sure that we are putting that focus on there so we can continue to get our community closer to green, get our businesses back open, get that economy pumping again, and make sure that our community members are safe and healthy.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Vihel-Coppler, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had occasion to open now the new documents. So I'm looking at the fiscal impact report, and it lists 3,450 under personnel and benefits. So are we hiring temporaries because it's non-recurring? Are we hiring temporaries to come in and do this, or what is this money for?
Ms. LaPanda Hill, can you answer that?
Yes, absolutely. Mr. Chair, Councilor Vihel-Coppler, that was an estimate of staff time. That the amount of time it would take for the chiefs and HR director and myself to prepare the reports, pull the reports, and prepare for a governing body. And so then it's just then mapped out as it lays out in the narrative. It's 1 hour of staff time for the following for the remainder of FY21. So that was a best guess estimate. Again, depending on how the resolution evolves, that could change, but that was all that number was.
Well, then that brings up like other kinds of questions, because we don't really do cost outs for personnel time for everything that we do. I'm wondering why. I mean, to me, this would be new money that we would need to plan for spending rather than staff time, which is already budgeted. So I don't, unless it's overtime or, so I guess, that's really a whole other description. And if the administration is going to take the time to put staff time into every single project that we do, then I think that deserves a discussion rather than to start doing this, because it's contrary to what I know fiscal impact reports purposes to be. But okay, so that's not anything new. That's already budgeted money, and it's
Correct.
already in the job description somewhere. So, okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Councilor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can we, as a body, approve this without the recommendation of the FIR? Just due to Councilor Vihel-Coppler's points, I'm in complete agreement with it that this is not additional costs that are being incurred, it's existing costs. So that number should be zero right now. Unless there is overtime incurred, we need to hire new staff or any additional supports needed. So my question is, and I guess that's to my colleagues in the committee, can we make a recommendation to approve this without the FIR, or a request to send the FIR back for revisions?
I think we can do that, Councilor. Let's continue to hear from the rest of the members, and then we'll decide on that. Councilor Casas Sanchez, you have your hand up again as well.
Yeah, it was a similar question that regarding the FIR, salaried exempt positions, so it is not an additional cost. So thank you, Councilor Vihel-Coppler. This was the first time that I had seen the FIR as well. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, thank you, Councilwoman Vihel-Coppler. I too, again, if you're an exempt employee, you're not eligible for overtime, so I'm not sure where the costs were coming from. So I think we can move it forward and ask staff to relook at the FIR. But I do agree that it needs to be part of the document moving forward so that we have an FIR when it comes to council on Wednesday. So I'm okay with that, Councilor Garcia. Any other questions or comments? See none. So what are the wishes of the committee?
Mr. Chair, I move to move this forward with a request to revise the FIR prior to
Second.
We have a motion from Councilor Vihel-Coppler, a second from Councilor Garcia. Any further discussion? Also, Councilor Abeyta had to leave us for a different situation. So just so you know, Ms. Reyes. All right, see no further discussion. Could we have a roll call vote, please, Ms. Reyes?
Councilor Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Garcia,
Yes.
Councilor Lindell,
Yes.
and Councilor Vihel-Coppler.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Ms. Reyes. See where we're at on the agenda. No discussion items, no executive session. Matters from staff. Anything from you, Ms. Wheeler?
No further matters, Chairman. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Ray Diaz or Mr. Jones, anything?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any.
I had nothing, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Matters from the committee.
I have nothing.
See none. Move on. Matters from the chair. So we've revamped the way we do our meetings a little bit. I'm sure you saw a little bit more efficient, a little bit faster. So if you noticed any changes, that's it. So Ms. Ray Diaz, thank you for stepping up and doing a great job tonight. Ms. Wheeler for taking the lead. Mr. Jones, you're not forgotten. We know you're still there. So thank you all. With that, our next meeting is Monday, January 11th, 2021. So looking forward to that. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
See you guys tomorrow or Wednesday.
Appreciate it.
Mhm.